This is the new Bolton Ebikes Blackbird. We are finally shipping these out to customers, so it's time for a unboxing and setup video. I have two special surprises on this bike, and that is there are two parts that we actually made here in the US that are installed on the bike shipping out right now. See if you can spot them in this video. I'm gonna jump right into what comes inside the box with your Blackbird. Now, when it comes out of the box, it's gonna look something like this. I've pulled a few pieces of the packaging protection foam off, a few more to go, but I've got two boxes and we're gonna start with those. Go ahead and cut those guys open. You open the box, the first thing you're going to find is a valve stem adapter. It's in a little baggie so you won't lose it because it's a small part, but one of the things that was changed or upgraded on the Blackbird was the valve stems that are used on the tires and wheels. The valve stem that's right here is what's called a Presta valve. These are more common on a lot of newer bikes, on road bikes, but that's one thing that was changed to go with these tubeless rims. And most pumps that people have, including the electric pumps that we sell, however, are set up for the older Schrader style, which is what you see on your car and most of you might be used to. So we're throwing this little adapter in there. Basically, this allows you to screw this piece onto a Presta valve, and then you can use a standard tire pump to inflate your tires if needed. Have the very nice wide flat pedals that go on the bike. And the final thing in this box is the charger. So if you're actually getting your bike set up right now, I would recommend taking this charger out of the box, getting your battery, which is out of the box underneath this one, and plugging it in. That way you can get a nice full charge or close to it by the time you're done setting up your bike. Here is your Blackbird battery. You can see we've added some little touches like adding an outline of the SR71 Blackbird onto the battery, among other places on the bike, which I'll show you later. Quick tip about battery charging. The charger has a light on it that will be red when the battery's charging, and it will turn green when it's done. Now, I don't recommend leaving it on 24/7, but the charger does stop when the battery is full. So if you leave it on there an extra hour or two, that's not gonna hurt anything. All it's gonna do is actually balance the cells in the battery, and if anything, it's gonna keep them a little bit healthier. Make sure not to miss the keys in the bottom of the bubble here. Those are to lock your battery on the bike. The other four things you'll find in the box are the seat post with the saddle already mounted. Now, real quickly, because I can show you the angle here, this is the lever for the seat dropper. So when this is on the bike, you just press that lever and the seat moves up and down. At this point, I would recommend putting the seat on the bike. This is the front fender. We'll set this aside for a little bit later. This you may need while setting up your bike. This is the Bolton Ebikes multi-tool, which can be rather handy. And finally, you'll find this little package, which is a tubeless sealant and conversion kit. There are two bottles of sealant, one for each tire, and there is also a valve stem adapter. So this is if you want to do the tubeless conversion. I'm not going to cover that in this video, but I will have another video out in the very near future that will show you how to do that setup. The first part I would go ahead and put on your bike would be the handlebars. So you have 4 bolts on the stem. You want to take those all the way out off the front. The front part of the stem will then slip over the handlebars and you tighten those 4 evenly back down. Next, I'm going to put the bike upside down. This is gonna make it a lot easier to get the front wheel on and set up and save some of the bits of foam from your packaging so you don't scratch anything up on the bike. For many of you, this may be your first time dealing with what's called a through axle as opposed to a quick release or an axle that's bolted on. It's a newer design that's much sturdier and much stronger, but to get your wheel on, it might be a little bit different process than what you're used to. There is a nut on the end of the axle on each end that you can unscrew. And then you also have 4 pinch bolts, 2 on this side and 2 on this side. So you're gonna need to just loosen those pinch bolts. You don't need to pull them all the way out, but the caps on the ends of the axle, you do need to remove those so you can slide this axle all the way out of the fork. ready to put the front wheel on. There is a spacer tucked into your brake caliper on the front here. You want to just slip that guy out. That's just for shipping. You can toss that to the side. You may want to save it in case you ever want to put it back in anytime you have the front wheel off. It just prevents you from squeezing the front brake pads together when you don't want them to be squeezed together. Now you can put the front wheel in place on the axle. So just line it up with the disc brake, and there are some small like half circles on each side. So this will set here with the bike upside down. When it's upright, you can't do that, so it's a little bit trickier to get everything lined up. But now that it's setting in place, we can take the axle and slip it back through, and you may have to wiggle your wheel just a little bit to get it started, and then all the way through the other side. So I have it in on this side. I'm gonna tighten the cap back on the opposite side. And once you have the axle fully seated and tightened on both sides, go ahead and snug up the 4 pinch bolts. Once again, there's 2 on each side. While this fork is upside down, I'm gonna show you one of the adjustments because it's easier to see from here. This red knob is the rebound adjustment. And if you turn it by hand, you can feel little clicks one way and you can go the other way. You'll feel clicks at some point, it will stop, but the rebound adjusts how fast the fork rebounds or how fast it comes back after being compressed. This is just a little adjustment that you can mess with to kind of fine tune your suspension fork and get it riding how you like it. Now at this point, the bike is flipped back upright because it's on its own 2 wheels. I've got the kickstand down. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the rest of the packaging protection and foam, and we're gonna put the pedals on. The pedals are clearly labeled right and left. Always a reminder that there is a difference. The right pedal has right hand threads, so righty tighty, lefty loosey, whereas the left hand pedal always has left hand threads. So that means you're gonna turn it counterclockwise to tighten. Now these pedals actually have 2 different ways to tighten them down. You can use a standard 15mm pedal wrench or the wrench on the multi-tool. But if you look on the back side of the axle, you'll see that there's a spot for a 6-sided hex Allen style wrench as well. Now I'm gonna put on the front fender and the headlight. So the light's gonna mount at the very front right here, and the fender tucks in right like this. I've had some people ask, why is the fender mounted so high? Why doesn't it hug the wheel closer? And just a reminder, this is an inverted suspension fork. So this part of the fork doesn't move. So if the wheel was moving up, it would just be bumping into the fender all the time. So that's out of necessity for this upgraded fork that we're using. But there's 2 bolts, they're pre-installed into the fork. You just need to remove those and then put them back in. One on the back holds just the fender. The one on the back is gonna hold both the fender on the front as well as the headlight. Once you've got the fender tightened down, the light has a little bit of an adjustment forward and back, and there's a small Phillips head screw. So if you need to adjust that, just move it where you need it and then tighten it down. Now that everything except for the battery is on the bike, which of course we have charging, it's a good idea to go through all of the nuts and bolts and make sure everything is tightened down. The things that I would make sure to check would be the 2 pinch bolts on the stem. You could check the bolt on the top that holds the cap on. Because this has an adjustable stem, this may be something that you want to change. So I'm gonna make sure that these guys are tight. Make sure that the handlebars are lined up straight with the front wheel before you tighten these down. Now let me remind you how the adjustable stem works. There's a single bolt on the left-hand side, and you just need to loosen it. Don't need to pull it all the way out. And once you get it loose enough, you can tilt the handlebars up and down. So if you want the bars to be up in a more upright, comfortable position, you can tilt them back, tighten that back down. Now you will see that the brakes now are tilted up. What that means is that if you're gonna move this around, you just need to loosen the 4 bolts that you originally put on to put the handlebars on, and then just tilt these right where you want them and then just snug them back down. I like more of a neutral position, so we're just gonna leave it right in the middle and tighten that down. I already know that the front axle is tight because we put that on. It's a good idea to go to the back of the bike and check the nuts over the motor axle. Make sure that these guys are tight. There's a little rubber cover that pops over there, and then you have the same thing on the left side. This one has the motor cable coming out, the left side does not. Now I would go ahead and check the rear derailleur and make sure that everything shifts smoothly. With the bike on the kickstand on the left side, easiest thing to do is just tilt it just a little bit and crank the pedals over by hand. And then you can use the shifter up on the handlebars, just slowly go up and down through the gears and make sure it shifts smoothly. Now with this one, I hear just a little bit of a clicking noise in certain gears, so that means it needs to be adjusted a hair. There are 4 adjustments that you can make on the derailleur. First, you have these 2 Phillips head screws on the derailleur itself. One has an H for high, one has an L for low. Those are limit screws, and basically that makes sure that the derailleur doesn't go too far into the motor and into the spokes, or too far down and into the frame. So if your bike is shifting correctly through all the gears, except for maybe just the top or just the bottom, one of those limit screws might be set a little bit tight. So you might want to actually back one of those out to allow it to shift into the next gear. And if it looks like it can move too far, you can always use those so it can't travel more than it's supposed to. There is a screw on the back called a B screw, and that helps to adjust not only the tension, but basically the distance that this first jockey wheel has from the cassette here. So you shouldn't have to mess with that, but if the jockey wheel, that's that first pulley right there, is too close to one of these gears, you tighten that and that pulls it away a little bit. Now what I need to do right now, because it was shifting off just a little bit in one gear here or there, is adjust the tension on this cable. And for this particular derailleur, we don't do that down here. If it's just a fine tuning, we do that up by the handlebars. This is the adjustment for a fine tuning of the shifter. So if you twist counterclockwise or to the left, that's going to basically increase the tension on the cable and move the shifter up into your lower but bigger gears. And if you turn it clockwise, that's going to release some of the tension and move the shifter down. So depending on which way you need it to go, you just turn one way or the other. Just about everything is done now. I would just do, like I said, a final glance over every nut and bolt, make sure that your brakes don't move like this. So if they do, that just means you need to tighten down that pinch bolt right here. The same goes for the buttons here. If they're moving a little bit, you can just snug them up just until they don't move when you wiggle them. You can do the same for the throttle, the left side brake. Just make sure all of those items are snug and they're not gonna move around on you. Once you have that done, I would recommend putting your battery on the bike, and I'll show you a basic operation of the screen. Here's how the lock works on the battery. When you turn the key, it just moves this pin up towards the top front of the battery. So you wanna make sure that's in the unlocked position, so you can slide this onto the cradle. And once it's in place, you just use that key, put it into the lock, and now the battery can't come off. Make sure the battery switch is on, your screen protector is peeled off, and then you can turn on the screen by holding the middle power button. I'm not gonna go into the advanced options on the screen because I have another video that talks about that, but let me show you the basics. So once again, hold the power button to turn it on. If you press the power button again quickly, then you can push the middle power button and hold it for a few seconds to turn on the display. You have a battery meter at the top left. You have the actual battery voltage next to that, the temperature. In the middle, you have your speed, which can be in kilometers or miles per hour, time, total time, distance, which is like a trip meter, odometer, and then we also have wattage on the bottom left corner and our pedal assist number. Now, if we press the middle button, we can change from the current speed to average speed. Press it one more time, that's gonna show the max speed achieved, and press it a third time and you go back to the main screen when you turn the bike on. Now, if you wanna clear any of these settings here, you just hold the top and bottom buttons at the same time. It'll start flashing on the time or the trip meter. Press the center button and that clears it down to 0. Now, if you hold the up button, that's gonna turn on the headlight. You'll see a headlight symbol on the display, and then the light on the bike actually comes on as well. Now, if we're on the main screen here and the bike's not moving, if we hold the down button, that enables what's called a walk mode. So that gets the motor to actually spin without using the pedal assist or the throttle. And then Finally, you have up and down arrows for the pedal assist. That's what you're gonna use when you're actually riding. So at 0, the bike is not going to assist you at all. You're just basically riding a bicycle without any motor assistance at that point. If you turn it to 1, the bike's gonna give you a little bit of power. 2, it gives you a little more. 3, 4, 5, even more, 5 being the maximum. Now you also have a throttle right here that you can press at any time to just get the motor going as well. One thing that's a little bit different about this bike than previous models I've had with these types of assist settings and with the pedal assist we're using is that it is a torque sensor, not a cadence sensor. So it actually knows how hard you're pedaling as well. If you're in number 1 and you pedal very lightly, the motor power is gonna be very, very slight. And if you pedal harder, it's gonna automatically give you more power. The opposite is true, for example, in number 5, you can still pedal very lightly and get just a little bit of assistance in 5, but if you pedal hard, it's gonna give you a ton of power. But number 5, number 4, 3, 2, 1, all of those are gonna vary slightly based on how hard you're pedaling and how much effort you're actually putting in. Finally, if you wanna get to the more advanced settings, you can hold the middle button when you first turn the screen on, and then hold the top and bottom arrows within 5 seconds of turning on the display. So instead of resetting the trip meter and your mileage, that's gonna get you to the advanced settings. The first option here is the speed limit. The second option is the tire diameter. The third option is the units. And for this, that's gonna change everything to miles per hour and Fahrenheit instead of kilometers per hour and Celsius. You can do any combination of those two. And then we have a bunch of other settings for the bike. And I'm not gonna go, like I said, into detail on these, but I will put the recommended settings in the description of this video. When you're done with the settings that you wanna change here, you can hold the power button again, just to go back to the main screen, and that saves everything. Finally, I wanted to give you guys a production update on where bikes are at. I'm releasing this video now because many people are starting to receive their Blackbird bikes. Now, the ones that are showing up in customers' hands are the bikes that were originally scheduled for August deliveries. And as you may have known from all the videos and emails and everything we've been putting out, things have been delayed considerably throughout this year. But that's the first batch of bikes that people had ordered. The second batch that was originally scheduled for September deliveries, those are actually at the port right now. So they're already in California, but they're not in our hands yet. So those are going to start shipping soon. It's possible by the time this video is out, we might already have them. And the third batch of bikes that was due for November shipping, those ones are sitting in China, at least at the time of recording this video. Hopefully by the time this video comes out, those will be on the water, on a boat, and on their way to the United States. And fourth, there is another batch that's being pre-sold. We have a very limited availability left for spring of 2021 delivery. So if you still want a Blackbird, there is a small chance you can still get one for spring of 2021. At this point, the only thing left to do is get on your bike, go ride it around, and have some fun. After you've done your initial shakedown test ride, I would recommend going through and double checking everything, adjusting anything that needs to be adjusted. You can change your tire pressure. If you want it softer, let some out. If you want it a little firmer, put some more air pressure in. One of the things I failed to mention as well was about this suspension fork. It has an adjustment right on the top for air pressure as well. It can take anywhere from 90 to 150 PSI. And so if you want the fork to be firmer, you add more pressure. And if you want it to be softer, you let some air out. If you have a fork pump, that is a great thing to have. If you don't, you can always ride your bike by the local shop and ask them to add a little bit of air for you and top that off wherever you'd like it to be. I wanted the Blackbird to be completely bulletproof. And because we have a motor that has way more power fed to it than normal, that meant installing some torque arms. On the 26-inch and 24-inch, you'll see they're slightly different styles, but this is a torque arm right here. It is a stainless steel 1/4-inch thick piece that supports the motor axle. so it can't move in the dropouts of the frame. And that's something that I designed, and we had laser cut here in the United States and installed before we shipped the bikes out. The second item that we had made in the United States on the Blackbird are these vents. Now these may change at some point in the future, but at least for right now, all of the bikes that are shipping out are having custom vents. There's one on each side that has the Bolton B, and then one on the top that has an outline of the SR71 Blackbird. This is another part that I designed here, and these ones we actually have 3D printed in-house out of a very tough nylon and carbon fiber material. If you want to know more detail about that, we've got more detail in the membership videos, the Bolton Labs, but that is the second part we had made here in the United States and installed here in Grass Valley. Thanks again for watching another video from Bolton Ebikes. If you enjoyed this video about the Bolton Ebikes Blackbird, there's good news. I have another video that pertains to this bike right here.